Armor, spikes, and survival. The dinosaurs of defense. In the age of dinosaurs, survival didn't always belong to the fastest or the biggest. Sometimes, it belonged to the ones that refused to die. This is the story of armor, of spikes, and of the dinosaurs that turned defense into a weapon. These were creatures that didn't just rely on speed or aggression. They relied on preparation, ingenuity, and the evolutionary understanding that sometimes the best defense is the defense you build into your very body. For millions of years, predators shaped evolution. Sharp teeth, powerful jaws, and relentless pressure pushed prey to innovate or disappear. But prey didn't simply vanish, they adapted. In an environment where danger was constant, where every shadow could harbor a predator, some dinosaurs chose a radical alternative to fleeing or fighting. They stopped trying to escape and started trying to end the fight before it began. This was the birth of survival through defense, a strategy that changed the dynamics of ecosystems across the Jurassic and Cretaceous. Instead of reacting to predators, these dinosaurs forced predators to react to them. The late Jurassic and Cretaceous were brutal places to be herbivorous. Predators didn't hunt once. They hunted repeatedly, testing, probing, and waiting for weakness. Every chase carried risk, and every bite could be lethal. Speed failed first, size failed next. The small and the slow were naturally eliminated, but even the larger herbivores were vulnerable without other defenses. So some dinosaurs made a radical choice. They turned their bodies into fortresses. And the first strategy was simple: don't be worth attacking. And the consequences were profound. Predators quickly learned that attacking the wrong dinosaur could result in injury or death, a lesson that shaped behavior across generations. The ultimate expression of this strategy was Ankylosaurus. Low to the ground and covered from head to tail in thick, bony plates, its skin wasn't skin. It was armor. Each osteoderm was fused into a living shield capable of deflecting bites, slashes, and crushing force. But Ankylosaurus didn't stop at passive protection. At the end of its tail was a massive club, solid bone reinforced with muscular power. One swing could shatter a predator's limb or puncture skulls, a weapon capable of ending fights before they truly began. Fossil evidence reveals healed fractures on theropod bones, signs suggesting that predators misjudged their targets. For Ankylosaurus, survival wasn't passive, it was active deterrence. Attack this dinosaur, and you risk permanent injury. Risk permanent injury, and death may follow. Evolution had created a walking, swinging fortress, both a deterrent and a weapon. But armor isn't the only way to survive. Some dinosaurs chose intimidation and psychological presence over brute strength. That strategy belonged to Stegosaurus. Tall plates ran down its back like a jagged skyline, while spikes, known as thagomizers, jutted from its tail like living spears. For decades, scientists debated their function. Were they for display, temperature control, or defense? The truth was all of the above. The plates made Stegosaurus appear larger, more imposing, and capable of defending itself, while the tail spikes were capable of delivering lethal blows to any predator who misjudged its reach. Predators didn't need to be struck to learn the lesson. Sometimes survival is about sending a clear signal. Approach at your own risk. And in ecosystems dominated by carnivores, such signals were as effective as claws or teeth. The strategy of defense extended beyond individual dinosaurs and became a matter of coordination and social intelligence. Triceratops provides one of the most compelling examples. 3 formidable horns, a massive frill, and a muscular body equipped it for confrontation. But these weapons alone weren't enough. Triceratops lived in herds, and the herd itself became a defensive mechanism. Adults formed protective circles around juveniles, presenting a wall of horns and frills to predators. All one-on-one encounters became nearly impossible. Attackers had to reckon not with an individual, but with a network of coordinated defense. Collective action transformed mere anatomy into a living fortress. In this way, defense didn't just reside in bone and muscle, it resided in strategy, in coordination, and in numbers. Beyond sheer survival, these defensive adaptations reshaped predator-prey dynamics over evolutionary timescales. Ankylosaurus, Stegosaurus, and Triceratops forced predators to innovate. Bites became more precise. Hunting tactics shifted from brute force to cunning strategy. Ambushes had to consider the possibility of retaliation. Predators learned that reckless attacks were punishable by injury or death. Over generations, this dynamic produced smarter hunters and more resilient prey, or an evolutionary arms race that went far beyond physical confrontation. Defense didn't end predation. It reshaped it, forcing both sides to adapt, innovate, and evolve in ways that defined entire ecosystems. Interestingly, these adaptations weren't just defensive, they were communicative. The plates of Stegosaurus could signal health, size, and readiness to fight. The herd behaviors of Triceratops broadcast social cohesion and strength. Ankylosaurus's tail club wasn't just a weapon, it was a visual and auditory deterrent. Every movement, every display, every thump of a club or sway of a tail transmitted information. Predators learned to read these signals over time, and the more predators hesitated, the more likely the prey survived. Evolution had crafted a system where knowledge, reputation, and presence could outweigh aggression. And in many ways, these dinosaurs teach a profound lesson about survival. It's not always about dominating through force. It's about controlling risk, shaping perception, and creating conditions where predators' own instincts work against them. By refusing to flee, by turning their bodies into fortresses, and by coordinating with their own species, these dinosaurs created a world in which life could persist against overwhelming odds. Their success demonstrates that in evolution, resilience can be as potent as power and defense as effective as attack. These were creatures that lived at the intersection of biology, behavior, and environmental mastery. Armor didn't make dinosaurs weak, it made them survivors. Spikes didn't make them passive, they made them dangerous. Herd tactics didn't make them dependent, they made them formidable. Each adaptation reflects a deep interplay between anatomy and environment, between predator and prey, and between risk and survival. The Age of Dinosaurs was not only a story of raw power, it was a story of strategy, deterrence, and the invisible battles waged in forests, plains, and wetlands. And in this context, the deadliest moves were not always the ones that ended fights, but the ones that prevented fights from starting in the first place. These armored giants, spiked titans, and horned defenders also illustrate the limits of predator evolution. While theropods and other carnivores grew stronger and faster, they could never entirely negate the advantage of well-adapted defense. Even the most cunning predator had to calculate risk. Every attack had to consider consequences. And in this delicate balance, entire species endured, shaping the world and leaving a legacy that outlasted their enemies. Defense, as demonstrated by Ankylosaurus, Stegosaurus, and Triceratops, was more than survival. It was strategy encoded in bone, muscle, and social behavior. It was intelligence expressed through anatomy and social cooperation. In a world where failure often meant instant death, these dinosaurs thrived not by dominating others, but by mastering the art of deterring them. Their very presence rewrote the rules of predation. And in doing so, they created an enduring model for understanding the power of defense in evolution. A power sometimes stronger than speed, stronger than size, and even stronger than aggression. But survival through defense didn't just shape predators, it reshaped ecosystems as a whole. When Ankylosaurus, Stegosaurus, and Triceratops became formidable enough to deter attacks, they altered the hunting patterns of theropods. Predators learned to avoid high-risk prey, which meant that weaker or younger herbivores became disproportionately targeted. This created a ripple effect, influencing population structures, migration timing, and even the evolution of juvenile behavior. Young herbivores learned to stay close to adults, not merely for guidance, but because the presence of armored or horned individuals increased their chances of survival. Evolutionary success was no longer just about individual traits. It was about how species influenced the behaviors of those around them. Defense also promoted innovation in predator strategy. Large theropods, faced with Ankylosaurus's tail clubs or Stegosaurus's thagomizers, had to develop techniques to avoid injury. The bite angles became precise. Attack sequences became cautious and deliberate. Fossilized teeth embedded in armored plates show that predators often attempted multiple angles before striking, and sometimes abandoned hunts altogether. This illustrates that the prey's defense didn't just prevent death, it demanded intelligence and planning from predators. In effect, these dinosaurs forced an arms race not only in strength but in cognition. The interplay between hunter and hunted created an invisible battlefield, one written into the bones and behaviors of both. Social defense amplified this effect. Triceratops herds didn't just rely on numbers, they created dynamic strategies that anticipated predator behavior. Adults formed protective barriers around young or weaker members, but they also communicated warning signals across the herd. So postures, movements, and even vocalizations conveyed imminent threats, teaching predators that attacking a group carried far more risk than attacking an individual. Herd dynamics became a living defense mechanism, and predators learned that hesitation, miscalculation, or impatience could result in crippling injuries. These behaviors exemplify an evolutionary truth. Sometimes survival depends less on killing and more on the perception of risk imposed on others. The impact of defensive evolution extended to the broader environment. Areas frequented by heavily armored dinosaurs became zones of relative safety for other species. Smaller herbivores could graze near Ankylosaurus or Triceratops without attracting predators, benefiting indirectly from their presence. Conversely, predators were forced to avoid or bypass these zones, concentrating hunting pressure elsewhere. Defense, therefore, didn't just protect the individual, it structured ecosystems, influencing which species thrived, which adapted, and which were ultimately marginalized. The arms race between predator and prey shaped the very landscape, turning geological space into a strategic battlefield. These adaptations demonstrate that survival is about more than immediate physical confrontation. It's about strategy, perception, and ecological influence. Ankylosaurus, Stegosaurus, and Triceratops show that evolution rewards not just raw power, but foresight, presence, and deterrence. By turning their bodies into fortresses, coordinating as herds, and sending signals predators could not ignore, these dinosaurs commanded respect and shaped life around them. And they embody a principle that resonates beyond paleontology. Sometimes the strongest weapon is restraint, the greatest advantage is awareness, and the most effective defense is one that makes enemies hesitate before they act. In a world ruled by predators, the dinosaurs that mastered this principle endured, thrived, and left a legacy far longer than those who relied solely on aggression. But perhaps the most remarkable lesson of these defensive dinosaurs is how they redefined the very meaning of power. Strength was no longer measured only in jaws or claws, but in the ability to influence behavior at a distance. A predator contemplating an attack had to calculate risk, anticipate retaliation, and weigh the cost of injury against potential gain. Ankylosaurus didn't need to swing its tail to win. Sometimes, simply being present was enough to make a hunting theropod reconsider. Stegosaurus didn't need to puncture flesh. Its towering plates and spiked tail created a psychological barrier as formidable as any bite. And Triceratops, with its horns bristling outward in a living wall of defense, turned mere numbers into tactical advantage. In this world, survival wasn't about striking first. It was about controlling the battlefield, asserting dominance through deterrence, and shaping the decisions of other creatures without ever drawing blood. These dinosaurs teach a profound evolutionary truth. Sometimes the most powerful weapon is not the one that strikes, but the one that commands respect, instills fear, and ensures survival simply by existing. In the end, armor, spikes, and collective defense were not mere adaptations, they were evolutionary statements. They prove that survival is as much about shaping behavior, influencing choices, and controlling perception as it is about teeth and claws. These dinosaurs didn't merely endure, they commanded respect, dictated predator behavior, and reshaped ecosystems in ways that are still visible in the fossil record today. In a world ruled by predators, sometimes the deadliest move is refusing to run, refusing to flee, and refusing to submit to the chaos around you. And in the next story, you'll see that one species discovered something even stronger than physical defense. It didn't fight back, it didn't charge, it didn't threaten, yet it survived, influenced, and dominated its environment by doing something far subtler. It made predators hesitate through intelligence, sound, and sheer presence.